Who are the modern day great powers of the world? First of all, some caveats. There is no one official definition of what a great power is. We all have different definitions. This video will go over my opinions and some other people's opinions, based on loose criteria. If you disagree though, then you disagree. And that is fine, but remember, neither of us are right or wrong. We are most likely disagreeing over a definition, rather than facts. The criteria I am judging this by: economic, cultural, military and diplomatic, on both a regional and a global scale. Let's begin with the United States. It has an excellent economic base, controlling, for now, the world's reserve currency, with many other nations adopting the US dollar. It is without a doubt that the US is a global economic superpower, despite its current setbacks. Culturally, we see America everywhere, and it's only in places with serious privacy laws that don't have strong American influence on a global scale. The Americans are masters of it. Militarily, the United States have bases all over the globe and can dominate any other power one-on-one in combat, except guerrilla forces, but that is always the case with great powers. Plus, it is a nuclear power, further adding to its global potential. Lastly, diplomatically, as the leader of NATO and many other organisations and alliances with veto rights in the United Nations, it is a diplomatic force that all need to have a good relationship with to be successful. Overall, I would argue that the United States is the most powerful, and I think this is currently not debatable. Given that they tick all four boxes on a global scale, I would argue the US is a superpower, and in fact the only sole superpower currently in existence. In second, I am ranking China. Their economic reach, although arguably a house of cards ready to collapse, is currently global, and this is further shown by their increasing levels of foreign investments. Culturally, China is doing great and terrible. Yes, we have a lot of Chinese culture, like Chinese takeaways on the streets, for example. But those are usually British companies paying tax to Britain, compared to McDonald's or watching The Simpsons on TV, where it all goes back to the United States. Further, people globally do want a government similar to America. Not all, but many do. At least from my experience, I have never met anyone in the UK who wants to go the China route. In terms of military power, they are on the rise and have a large army, but it is still very limited to China and the surrounding areas. Whereas the US can have bases on the doorstep of China, the Chinese are not heavily present in Mexico or Canada. These balloons do not count. Diplomatically, China does have veto power at the United Nations, has been able to secure a good local alliance network, and has done an excellent job at maintaining its power over Russia. I would say they are global on the diplomatic scene. In conclusion, China is a great power, but their lack of global reach culturally and militarily cuts them off from being a superpower. This could be changed though, if Russia becomes more of a puppet to China and the Chinese programs of expanding into East Africa happen to prove highly successful, then I would say they would have superpower status. Russia in third. Economically, their fingers stretch to Europe and their neighbours, but the sanctions have not proved as devastating as many predicted. I would call Russia a regional economic power, but not a global one, particularly given that they are hardly touching on their full potential at all. Culturally, Russia also struggles. As someone learning the Russian language and Russian history, trust me when I say, hardly anyone here knows anything. In the UK, I can find US-themed shops, Chinese shops, Italian shops, but nothing Russian. If anything, Russia's claim to fame, culturally abroad, is as the bad guy in American culture. Their military, although highly nuclear, has not had a great time in the Ukraine recently. They have global bases, but compared to the US, they are still very far behind. Diplomatically, they have veto status, but they are struggling. This is a theme of Russia throughout history though. Diplomatically, they struggle. In conclusion, Russia is a great power, but are a long way from being a superpower, and current events are not helping them there. In 4th and 5th, I am going to rank Britain and France. Economically, both are fantastic. Yes, it could be better, but it could also be much worse, and I think we tend to forget that at times. Both have maintained some sense of their empire, Britain through the Commonwealth and weird tax haven islands, and France through French-speaking West Africa. Their power is global in that regard, yet weaker than the US and China, whilst also declining. Culturally, they do a fantastic job at being recognised globally, yet pull people in as tourists who want to see the original culture. I can experience Chinese culture in my own city or US culture on TV, but a US citizen cannot really experience Britain, as it's more something you have to be there for. France is the same. I think it's a European thing. In terms of military, both are nuclear powers and can hold up on their own. Diplomatically, both are part of the G7, hold veto status, and are high-ranking members of NATO, with France also being a major player in the European Union. Both are great powers, still, in my mind, declining but not yet in the danger zone. A part of their power status is based on history, which does rank them lower, but all things considered, they are doing great. Those are, in my opinion, the 5 great powers. Now we get to the debatable nations. In no particular order, Germany. Economically, very powerful. A major, arguably the major, power in the EU. They have great industrial output and financial strength. Germany is a key player in the world's economic structure. Culturally, they struggle. Their cars are great though. Their culture influence is mostly regional. In terms of military, they have no nuclear arsenal of their own, which does seriously hinder them. A great power, in my opinion, needs to be able to defend itself against its most powerful neighbour. All on the list so far can do that. Germany versus France, 1v1. France would win due to the nuclear advantage. Despite having good military potential, I do weigh the nuclear threat very highly, so their military power is regional. Diplomatically, they are a part of G7 and NATO and the EU, but hold no veto status. In conclusion, whereas Britain and France are held up due to their past, Germany is held back due to theirs, and unfortunately, to some extent, still not trusted, which limits their ability. They are a great regional power, but they lack enough of a global aspect for me to add them onto the list of great powers. However, many would rank them up there, and I perfectly respect those opinions. I can see why. India. Economically, they have a large population, and great potential from that. Culturally, it is present, but holds many of the same limitations as China. Militarily, they have nuclear capabilities, and I think can hold out against their neighbours, even China. However, geography plays more of a factor there than the nation's power itself. Not a global power, but they can hold on their own. Diplomatically, India is doing great as a neutral power in the world, able to bridge the gap, getting along with both Russia and the West. India, diplomatically, is a super interesting nation, and I would say a global power because of that. In conclusion, I would say India just falls into the list of the great power category. Their neutrality makes them look weaker, as we hear less about them on the news, but in fact, it actually gives them strength. Brazil. I will skim over this one as I don't know much about Brazil, but basically good resources, strong economic potential paired with a decent military and a lot of potential to grow. I think Brazil will be a great power someday. The Germany of South America, possibly. but with more global reach due to their potential navy and geographical position. But as of today, I would say no. Japan is a rich country, but seriously declining due to its ageing population, which is most likely only going to get worse. Culturally, they are a global power, however, and have their tech and art recognised everywhere, whilst becoming a major tourist destination. They are a part of G7. Japan is an interesting one. If it is a great power, then it's more of a cultural, influential power rather than a military one. Personally, I would not rank it on this list, but understand why some people would. Italy. I honestly don't know why people rank Italy as a great power. Now, here is a nation that is really reliant on its past status to get here. And even in the past, they were reliant on their past status to be seen as a great power. In terms of economics, diplomacy and military, it's basically just a weaker version of Germany. If Germany does not make it on the list, Italy certainly will not. Culturally, it is doing great though, and on a global scale, but again, in this category, it is just Japan, but weaker. I am sorry Italy, I love you, but I don't see you as a great power, and to be honest, never did, no matter how much people want to rank you in that category. Pakistan has nukes, but really should not, and it's just a fall of history, I guess, that they do. And Israel have them as well. These two are nuclear powers with devastating local potential, but I would not rank them as great powers. In the end, I would say there are 6 great powers. If I dare predict the future, then Brazil and Liechtenstein could eventually make it on the list, but neither are there yet. Anyway, hope you enjoyed and learnt something. This has been Harry's History, and let me know what nations you think are great powers or potential future players. Remember though, it really depends on how we define the term.